The silence in the open plan office was so heavy it felt like it was crushing the air out of my lungs. 60 people stopped typing, stopped drinking their coffee, and stopped breathing to look at me. In the center of the room stood Alaric Kane, the CEO of Kane Architecture, and the man I had viewed as a father figure for 5 years. His face was twisted into a sneer I had never seen directed at me before. Usually, that look was reserved for contractors who missed deadlines or clients who questioned his genius. Today, it was for me. "You'll never work in this industry again, Marin," Alaric boomed, his voice echoing off the glass walls of the conference room we had just exited. "I made your career. I plucked you from obscurity, and I can end it just as easily." I stood there, clutching a box of personal items I had been forced to pack in under 3 minutes. My hands were shaking, but I locked my knees to keep from collapsing. The humiliation burned my cheeks. I could feel the eyes of the junior associates, people I had trained, burning into my back. "You are fired for a gross breach of trust," he announced to the room, though we both knew it was a lie. "Security, escort her out." I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just looked at him, etching the image of his arrogance into my mind. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking a lonely rhythm on the polished concrete. I remained silent, but my eyes made a promise. I wasn't done. To understand why that moment shattered my world, you have to understand who I was before the fall. My name is Marin Duval. For as long as I could remember, I believed that loyalty was the most important currency in business. I was wrong. 5 years ago, I was fresh out of architecture school, drowning in student debt and hungry for a chance. Alaric hired me when no one else would. He told me he saw raw fire in my sketches. I became his shadow. I worked 18-hour days, skipped holidays, and canceled dates, all to serve the vision of Kane Architecture. I was his protege, his right hand, the person he trusted with the most delicate blueprints. We had recently landed the biggest client in the firm's history, the Apex Museum project. It was a massive, multi-million-dollar contract that would put the firm on the global map. I had spent 6 months sleeplessly designing the structural curve that won the bid. I remembered the night we won the National Design Award for it. I stood in the back of the ballroom, clapping until my hands hurt, waiting for Alaric to invite me on stage. He accepted the trophy, beaming under the spotlight. "I did this alone," he told the crowd. "It came to me in a dream." I froze. I checked the program brochure. Under lead architect, only his name was listed. Mine was nowhere to be found. I tried to convince myself it was an oversight. Alaric was busy. Maybe the printers made a mistake, but deep down, I knew the truth. Over the next few weeks, the rose-colored glasses started to slip off. I began to notice a pattern I had been too blind to see before. Alaric didn't just mentor people, he used them. He would find young, eager talent, people like me who were desperate for approval, and squeeze every drop of creativity out of them. Then, the moment they started to shine too brightly, the moment a client asked for them by name instead of him, the dynamic shifted. He started undermining me in meetings. If I suggested a material, he would laugh and call it pedestrian. If I proposed a timeline, he would roll his eyes and apologize to the client for my inexperience. One afternoon, I was in the break room getting coffee when a junior designer named Elias walked in. He looked over his shoulder to ensure we were alone. "Be careful, Marin," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "He feels threatened. He did the same thing to the senior lead before you. She didn't quit, she was destroyed." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach churning. "He makes sure you can't leave," Elias said, pouring his water quickly. "He burns your reputation before you even know you're on fire." The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I had been leading a pitch for a luxury eco-resort. It was my baby. I had built the 3D models, sourced the sustainable timber, and written the entire proposal. The presentation was saved on the firm's internal secure drive. On the morning of the board meeting, I logged in to do a final review. The folder was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I frantically searched the backup drives. Nothing. It was as if my work had never existed. I ran to Alaric's office, breathless. Alaric, the resort files, they're gone. The presentation is in an hour. Alaric didn't look up from his desk. He was calmly flipping through a printed portfolio. My portfolio. Relax, Marin, he said smoothly. I found your files. I moved them to my personal drive for safekeeping. I'll be handling the presentation today. But I did the work, I stammered. You don't even know the specs for the solar grid. He stood up, towering over me, a dark smile playing on his lips. You're talented, Marin, but you are not indispensable. Clients pay for the Kane name, not for the assistant who does the drafting. He leaned in close. If you want a future here, you'll learn to stay in your lane, or you'll be phased out quietly. I didn't stay in my lane. I made a mistake. I pushed back. I sent an email to the partners clarifying my role in the Eco Resort project. I thought I was protecting my integrity. I didn't realize I was stepping into a trap. Almost immediately, the atmosphere in the office shifted from cold to hostile. Rumors started circulating. I heard whispers in the bathroom that I was leaking client data to competitors. I heard someone say I was having a mental breakdown and was unstable. It was a smear campaign, calculated and efficient. Alaric was poisoning the well. On a Tuesday morning, I tried to log into the server to access a project I was managing. Access DENIED. I tried again. Contact administrator. Confused, I walked toward the IT department, but the HR director intercepted me in the hallway. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Marin, we need to speak, she said stiffly. An internal ethics investigation has been opened regarding your conduct. My conduct, I laughed, a shrill, disbelief-filled sound. I'm the one being erased. We have reports that you've been insubordinate and hostile to leadership, she recited from a clipboard. Until the investigation is complete, you are locked out of all systems. I realized then that the truth didn't matter. Alaric controlled the narrative, and I was just a character he was writing out of the script. The investigation was a sham. It lasted 3 days. They didn't interview me. They didn't ask for my side of the story. They just built a paper trail to justify what Alaric wanted to do. I was called into the glass conference room, the fishbowl. Alaric sat there. Looking bored, the HR director slid a termination letter across the table. The words blurred before my eyes: loss of client confidence, breach of protocol. This is insane, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. I built this department. And now you're leaving it, Alaric said, checking his watch. You have 5 minutes to collect your personal effects. Security will watch you pack. He didn't even stand up to shake my hand. He treated me like a vendor he had decided to stop using. As the security guard marched me to the elevator, holding my box of meager belongings, I felt a numbness spread through my body. The elevator doors were closing when I saw Alaric pick up his phone. He was laughing. Through the narrowing gap of the doors, his voice drifted to me, loud and clear. Don't worry about her. I made a few calls. She'll never work in this city again. The doors slammed shut, sealing my fate, or so he thought. Alaric wasn't bluffing. The architectural world in our city was small, incestuous, and dominated by powerful men who all played golf at the same club. I spent the next month applying to every firm in a 50-mile radius. I had a stellar portfolio. I had awards. I had experience. But the moment I mentioned my time at Kane Architecture, the interviews turned ice cold. We aren't hearing right now, one director told me, despite having a now hearing banner on his website. We heard there were complications at your last role, another said, looking at me with suspicion. We don't need drama. My references were poisoned. Alaric had blacklisted me. My savings began to drain away. I moved out of my nice apartment and into a studio with a leaking ceiling. I stopped buying coffee. I ate ramen noodles for dinner. My phone stopped ringing. Even coworkers I had considered friends, people I had bought birthday gifts for, people I had covered for when they were sick, stopped answering my texts. They were terrified of Alaric. I hit rock bottom on a rainy Tuesday night. I was sitting on my floor, staring at a disconnection notice for my electricity. I felt entirely broken. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Callan, a former intern I had mentored a year ago. "I quit today. I couldn't take it anymore. You were right about him. He's a monster." I met Callan at a dive bar that night. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes that aged him 10 years. He bought me a beer because he knew I couldn't afford one. "It's gotten worse since you left," Callan said, shaking his head. "The culture is toxic. Alaric is paranoid. He screams at people for breathing wrong, and he's taking credit for everything. The team is miserable." "I'm sorry, Callan," I said, feeling a pang of guilt that I wasn't there to protect them. "Don't be sorry," he said intensely. "Be competition." I laughed bitterly. With what money? I can't even pay my electric bill, and I'm blacklisted. "You're blacklisted from working for them," Callan said, leaning in. "But clients don't care about office politics. They care about design, and everyone knows you were the brain behind the Apex Museum. The developers know." He took a napkin and a pen. "We'd work for you, Marin, me, the junior team. If you started a firm, we'd follow you." "I can't," I said, but the seed was planted. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, my heart racing. I opened my laptop, the screen illuminating my bare apartment. I opened a blank canvas. My hand moved instinctively. I sketched a circle, broken but reforming into a star. I typed the words beneath it, Nova Studio. Nova, a star that suddenly becomes thousands of times brighter, usually after a collapse. A rebirth. The next morning, I did the scariest thing I had ever done. I went to the bank and withdrew every cent from my 401k. The penalties were steep, and the teller looked at me like I was crazy, but I didn't care. It gave me just enough cash to survive for 6 months if I didn't eat much. I found an office space. It wasn't a glass tower. It was a dusty, cramping room above a noisy coffee shop in the artistic district. The floorboards creaked, and the internet was spotty, but it was mine. I painted the walls white myself. I bought desks from a thrift store. I set up my laptop on a folding table. Now I needed a client. I couldn't go after the big fish yet. Alaric had them locked down. I needed someone who hated the establishment as much as I did. I remembered a developer named Mr. Vance. Years ago, Alaric had publicly humiliated him during a town hall meeting, calling his budget insulting. Vance had stormed out. Vance owned a lot of mid-level commercial properties. He wasn't glamorous, but he had money. I found his number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was trembling. "You'll never work in this industry again." Alaric's voice echoed in my head. "Watch me," I whispered and pressed dial. Mr. Vance agreed to meet me, mostly out of curiosity. I walked into his office wearing my only good suit, carrying a portfolio that contained my soul. "So," Vance said, leaning back in his chair. He was a gruff man with calloused hands. "You're the girl Kane fired, the one who supposedly went crazy." "I'm the woman who designed the Apex Museum while Kane took the credit," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I'm the woman who knows you want to develop the Old Mill District, but Kane quoted you 3 times your budget." Vance raised an eyebrow. "And you can do it cheaper." "I can do it better," I corrected. "And I can do it for a fair price because I don't have a glass tower to pay for." I laid out my sketches. I had spent the last 3 nights designing a concept for his mill project. It was gritty, industrial, and perfect for his brand. Vance looked at the drawings. He looked at me. Silence stretched for an agonizing minute. "You're talented, kid," he grunted. "But talent is cheap. Execution is hard. Can you really deliver a project this size without Kane's infrastructure behind you?" "I have something Kane doesn't," I said. "I have nothing to lose. I will work until my fingers bleed to make this perfect." He stared at me, then he closed the folder. "I'll let you know." I walked out feeling like I had failed. But the next morning, my phone rang. "Let's give you a shot," Vance said. "Don't make me regret this." I called Callan immediately. "I got the mill project. Can you start today?" "I'm giving my notice right now," he practically shouted. I also brought on Leora, a freelance graphic designer I knew who had been bullied out of the industry years ago. It was just the three of us in that tiny room above the coffee shop. We worked like maniacs. The air conditioning broke, so we worked with the windows open, sweating over blueprints while the smell of roasted coffee beans drifted up. We ordered pizza at midnight. We slept under our desks. But for the first time in years, there was laughter. There was no ego. If Callan had a better idea than me, we used it. If Leora wanted to try a bold color scheme, we tried it. I treated them like partners, not servants. The mill project launched 3 months later. It didn't just succeed, it exploded. The design was fresh, modern, and human. The local news picked it up. Influencers started taking photos in front of the building. The headline in the local paper read, "New firm Nova Studio breathes life into old mill." Alaric's name wasn't mentioned once. Success breeds success. After the mill project, the phones started ringing. A boutique hotel wanted a consultation. A tech startup wanted a new headquarters. Word began to spread in the underground current of the city. Go to Nova Studio. They're faster, they're cheaper, and they actually listen. We weren't huge yet, but we were dangerous. We were nimble. 6 months in, I attended the annual architecture gala. I bought a ticket with my own money. I wore a red dress, bold, impossible to miss. I saw Alaric across the room, holding court with a circle of sycophants. He looked older. Heaps of champagne glasses surrounded him. I walked past him. He stopped talking. His eyes locked onto mine. For a second, I saw a flicker of confusion, maybe even fear. But then he sneered and turned his back, pretending he hadn't seen me. He spoke louder to his group, laughing at some joke. He thought if he ignored me, I would disappear. He didn't realize that by ignoring me, he was letting me get close enough to strike. The morning after the gala, the blow came. I opened my email to find a subject line in all caps, cease and desist, intellectual property theft. It was from a high-priced law firm representing Kane Architecture. The letter accused Nova Studio of using proprietary design processes and stolen client lists belonging to Kane. They demanded we shut down immediately and pay damages, or they would sue us into oblivion. Callan read the email over my shoulder and turned pale. "Marin, we can't afford a lawsuit. They'll bury us in legal fees before we even get to court. This is how he destroys people." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a bully tactic. He knew he couldn't beat us on design, so he was trying to beat us with his wallet. I took a deep breath. I looked at our latest blueprints, work that was 100% original, created in this tiny, hot office. "He thinks I'm the same scared girl he fired," I said, a cold calm settling over me. "He thinks I'll fold." I smiled. "I'm not folding." I didn't hire a big firm. I called a friend from college, now a pit bull of a lawyer who hated corporate bullies. We drafted a response. We didn't just deny the claims. We attached receipts. I had timestamps of every file creation. I had emails proving Vance approached me, not the other way around. And most importantly, I attached public records of sketches I had done in college, styles Alaric was claiming were his proprietary invention. We sent the letter back with a simple message. "We welcome a public trial. We have plenty of evidence regarding the true authorship of past Kane projects that we would love to enter into the public record." It was a threat. If he sued me, I would expose that he stole the Apex Museum design. Alaric went silent. The lawsuit never came. But something else did. Within a week of the legal standoff, my LinkedIn inbox chimed. It was a message from a senior architect at Alaric's firm, one of his best. "I heard you stood up to him. No one has ever done that. Are you hearing?" Then another message, and another. I didn't want to become what I hated. I didn't want to steal people. So I set a rule: I would not recruit. I would only interview people who came to me. And they came. I met the senior architect, a woman named Alina, for coffee. She looked shell-shocked. "It's a sinking ship," she told me. "He's losing his mind. He's paranoid that everyone is a spy for you. He's checking our emails. He's screaming at clients." "I can't pay you what he pays you," I warned her. "Not yet." "I don't care about the money," Alina said. I want to remember why I became an architect. I want to work for a human being. One by one, I interviewed the refugees from Kane Architecture. They were talented, brilliant people who had been beaten down by a narcissist. I hired them. We had to knock down a wall in the office to fit more desks. During one interview, a project manager dropped a bombshell. You know why he's really panicking? The Department of Labor is sniffing around. He hasn't been paying overtime for 3 years. The shift in power was subtle at first, then exponential. Alaric started showing up late to board meetings. Industry gossip said he looked disheveled, that he was drinking too much at lunch. Meanwhile, Nova Studio was a machine. We were hungry, and we had the best talent in the city because half of them used to work for him. Then came the kill shot. We received a request for a proposal from the city council. It was for the new library annex. This was a legacy project, the kind of thing Alaric lived for. But the email came to us. I called the city planner. I'm honored, I said, but I assumed Kane Architecture would be the frontrunner for this. We reached out to them, the planner said, his voice tight. Mr. Kane was difficult. He insulted our timeline. And frankly, we've heard good things about your team. We heard you actually designed the Apex Museum. I smiled. The truth was finally outrunning the lie. We pitched the library, we poured our hearts into it, and we won. The American Architecture Awards ceremony was the night everything changed forever. Both firms were nominated for Best Commercial Space. Kane Architecture for a generic office tower, and Nova Studio for the old mill renovation. I wore the same red dress. This time I didn't walk past Alaric. I sat 2 tables away from him. He sat alone. His table was half empty. His staff hadn't shown up. The presenter opened the envelope, and the winner is Nova Studio Maren Duval. The applause was thunderous. As I walked to the stage, I glanced at Alaric. He wasn't sneering anymore. He was staring at me with his mouth slightly open, his face pale in the strobe lights. I took the microphone. I looked out at the crowd, then directly at him. This award is for the team, I said. For the people who work late nights not because they are forced to, but because they are valued. For the voices that were told they were too small to matter. The host then read the judges' comments on our design. A concept that is brave, innovative, and refreshingly human. I recognized the description. It was the exact concept Alaric had thrown in the trash 2 years ago, calling it naive. The next morning, Architectural Digest ran a feature story. The headline was better than I could have dreamed. From fired protege to industry disruptor, the rise of Nova Studio. The article didn't hold back. It detailed my firing. It detailed the growth of my firm. And while it didn't name Alaric explicitly as a villain, it connected the dots. It mentioned the exodus of talent from Kane Architecture to Nova. The public loves an underdog. My inbox exploded with fan mail, with student portfolios, with client inquiries. Reporters started calling Alaric for comment. Why are your best staff leaving? Why did you fire the woman who is now outperforming you? He refused to answer. He hid in his office, but the silence was louder than any defense. Desperation makes people sloppy. Alaric tried one last, flailing attempt to destroy me. He gave an interview to a tabloid blog, claiming I had stolen his client list and that my designs were plagiarized. She's a fraud, he was quoted as saying. She stole my intellectual property. It backfired spectacularly. Vance, my first client, posted a public statement on Twitter. Alaric Kane refused to work with my budget. Maren Duval listened. She didn't steal me, she earned me. Then the library committee released a statement supporting our ethics. Finally, a reporter from the Post dug deeper. She published an exposé titled The Glass Tyrant. It featured anonymous quotes from dozens of former employees, people I hadn't even hired, detailing the verbal abuse, the stolen credit, and the toxic culture at Kane Architecture. Alaric had tried to bury me with rumors. Instead, he was buried by the truth. The end of Kane Architecture came swiftly. Sponsors for his upcoming projects withdrew, citing values misalignment. The board of directors, the men who had once protected him, realized he was now a liability. I heard the news from Alina. They voted him out, she said, looking at her phone. Forced early retirement. He's gone, Marin. He's out of the firm he built. I felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Relief, yes, triumph, definitely, but also a heavy sadness. He had been brilliant once. He could have been a legend, but his ego had eaten him alive. An hour later, an email popped up on my phone. It was from his personal address. Congratulations. You've won. Hope it was worth it. No apology, no remorse, just bitterness. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I wanted to type. It was worth every second. I wanted to tell him that he did this to himself. I wanted to list every insult he had ever hurled at me. I typed out a paragraph of venom. Then I looked around my office. I saw Callan laughing with a new intern. I saw Alina sketching in the sunlight. I saw a team of 20 people who loved their jobs. I realized Alaric didn't deserve my anger anymore. He didn't deserve my energy. He was the past. I deleted the draft. I deleted his email. Just then my office door knocked. It was Torin. Torin was the crown jewel. He was the lead architect at Kane, the man Alaric had sworn would never leave. He was a genius, and he had stayed loyal to Alaric until the bitter end. Can I come in? Torin asked. I motioned for him to sit. Torin looked relieved to be out of the other building. I heard he's gone, I said. He is, Torin sighed. But the firm, it's broken, Marin. The toxicity is in the walls, the clients are leaving. The remaining staff are shell-shocked. He looked me in the eye. We're all tired of watching talent rot under arrogance. I want to build things again. I want to come here. You want to join Nova? I asked, stunned. Me, he said, and 3 of the senior designers. We want to work for you. This was it, the final piece. With Torin and his team, Nova Studio would officially have more talent, more capacity, and more revenue than Kane Architecture ever did. We'd be honored, I said, shaking his hand. That afternoon, the paperwork was signed. We had officially poached the last of the King's Guard. Nova Studio wasn't just a scrappy startup anymore. We were the new market leader. Over the next year, what remained of Kane Architecture dissolved. Without Alaric's name and without the talent he had driven away, the firm couldn't survive. It was bought out by a conglomerate and dissolved. Alaric was persona non grata. He was blacklisted, not by a smear campaign, but by his own track record. One afternoon, I was reviewing a partnership proposal with a large engineering firm. We were looking to collaborate on a stadium project. My assistant buzzed me. Marin, I have some news. You're not going to believe who applied for a consultant role at the engineering firm we're partnering with. Who? Alaric Kane. I sat back in my chair. The man who said I would never work in this industry again was now applying for a mid-level consulting gig at a company that answered to me. 30 minutes later, the hearing manager at the engineering firm called me. Ms. Duval, he said respectfully, we see that Alaric Kane listed you as a former associate. We know the history is complicated, but we value your partnership above all. If you say no, we won't hire him. It was the ultimate power. I held his livelihood in my hand. I could crush him. I could tell them he was a monster. I could ensure he never earned $1 again. I thought about the fear in the eyes of my staff. I thought about the stolen files. But I also thought about the culture I had built at Nova. We were built on integrity. He is a talented architect, I said calmly. His technical skills are undeniable. The manager waited for the but. However, I continued, my voice steady, leadership requires more than ego. He is not a team player. If you hire him, keep him away from the people. He destroys culture. Thank you, Ms. Duval, the manager said. That's all we needed to know. We won't be proceeding with his application. I hung up. I didn't feel gleeful. I just felt free. I stood by the window of my new office. We had just moved into a warehouse conversion. High ceilings, brick walls, flooded with natural light. Below me, the city skyline gleamed. I looked at the reflection in the glass. I looked stronger than the girl who had walked out of that conference room with a cardboard box. Alaric had said I'd never work in this industry again. He was right. I didn't work in the industry anymore, scrapping for crumbs, begging for approval, hiding in the shadows of great men. I ran a part of it. I turned around to face the room. Callan, Leora, Torin, and 30 others were gathered for our Monday morning meeting. They were laughing. They were happy. On the wall behind me, our motto was etched in steel letters. Built on integrity, led by empathy. I smiled at my team. All right, everyone, I said, let's get to work. Sometimes, revenge isn't about burning the other person down. Sometimes, revenge is just doing it better and letting them watch.